News, politics, and special guests with a Texas twist. That's the goal of the Luke Macias Show. Our nation and state are at a crossroads, and if you're not informed, you're not equipped to make the change that our community needs. Join the conversation and join the cause for liberty today. Welcome to the third episode of the Luke Macias Show. I am Luke Macias, and I'm joined by my co-host, Raz Schaefer. Raz, thank you for joining us today.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, so we are going to get into our conversation today, which is with the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. Raz, you've had a chance to listen to that conversation. I was really excited that the chairman decided to sit down with us and have a conversation. What were some of your big takeaways from it?
You know, there are three things that I really want to make sure that listeners are keeping their ears out for. The first was how he's talking about how Texas is preparing with the Republican Party for 2020. Luke, you and I, from being involved in politics, are big on ground game, having face-to-face, person-to-person conversation with voters. And in the past, the Republican Party of Texas pretty much given the top of the ticket, whoever the statewides are, it's on them to build a ground game and make sure we're talking, communicating with voters. And I think in something that I'm really excited about, Chairman Dickey is working to make sure that the Republican Party of Texas has a strong ground game that they're organizing and working through. So that's really exciting to me with the number of field staff looking to bring on. That's going to have a big impact. Yeah. Second was that when he was reelected in the convention fight about that, there was a lot of accusations thrown around that you and I, we believe, were without base, and there was no evidence of. But going out of that, they did a great job of asking for an independent audit to make sure that those are totally put to bed, and it turns out they were all false, demonstrably. So it's great to have.
And if you're not, if you're not a state GOP delegate, which some of our listeners are not, at the last state convention, there were some accusations made. You'll hear about this in the interview with the chairman, and he put a lot of effort into getting to the bottom of those and bringing those out. And so it was good to kind of bring that to the surface, bring it to light, clear the air on that issue. On the ground game, I think it's interesting that, and I think you and I would both agree that we're hoping that statewide candidates in Texas no longer cede the ground game just to one campaign. And really, the reality is that they said, for the large part, Greg Abbott's going to bring the ground game home, and that's what's going to happen. And then Beto carried the Democrats, and Beto had a significantly larger, more aggressive ground game than our governor. And that's not to blame Governor Abbott. It's to recognize the fact that he was the only one even doing anything. United States Senator Ted Cruz, Dan Patrick, Ken Paxton, none of these people even had individuals on the ground working in the neighborhoods. And at some point, conservatives and Republicans are going to have to wake up and recognize that they have to get into the granular level, into the neighborhoods within each of these competitive counties, and really start to build data driven by the information on the ground. So it was really exciting to hear that the Republican Party is saying, hey, we're going to start leading the effort to drive that home.
The third point was talking about his legislative involvement. And that's an area where that's really been missing, I think, for a long, long time in the Texas Republican Party. And what he's doing is he's not being a Lone Ranger or Rambo with this stuff and just pushing his own policy agenda. He's saying these are the things that the members of the Texas Republican Party have said are important, and we're going to just remind our legislators about those, and we're going to work in a coalition manner to make sure that things that the Republican Party says are important, that as representatives of the Republican Party and the people of Texas, that you guys are paying attention to, which is it shouldn't be groundbreaking, but it's new and it's exciting to those of us that have been involved in those fights for a long time.
I agree. At the start of the interview, it's just always fun to hear that, in 2007, James Dickey wasn't even involved in the political process. And in 2008, he decided to attend a precinct convention. And 10 years later, he's the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. I think that does speak to the grassroots nature of the party and just how quickly somebody can rise in the ranks. So that's an encouraging thing. Real quick, Raz, we're going to get straight to that conversation with Chairman Dickey. I do want to remind everybody who is sponsoring this show, an organization that's near and dear to your heart and mind, which is Patriot Academy. You can go to patriotacademy.com to find out more information about them. But this is a leadership institute Students 16 to 25 have an opportunity to come into the Capitol here in Texas and across the nation in other state capitals and play the role of a legislator for a week. And again, these are, juniors and seniors in high school, college students, graduate students who are coming in and engaging in the political process, discussing actual laws, debating the actual policies, and at the same time having chances to hear from some of the best speakers in the world, including people like David Barton, and getting talks by economics professors about free market economic principles and things like that. So just a phenomenal deal. I know you attended Patriot Academy, and you and I have both mentored. So what are some of your big takeaways from the work that they're doing?
I really can't overemphasize the impact that attending Patriot Academy as a student had on my development. It did so much. I mean, getting to be literally on the House floor in the Texas Capitol, speaking, debating these bills, running through the entire process from drafting a bill, bringing drafted bills, debating those, moving them through that process, and then getting bills passed and debating those things on the floor. It's a phenomenal experience. And Rick and his entire team, your dad has run the Torch Freedom Foundation, which runs that. We're talking about people who have been legislators. They know how this stuff works. They've studied the Constitution, and they have a real heart for actually mentoring these young people. And let's not forget about the veterans track. They have a separate track where they're bringing military and law enforcement veterans that are interested in increasing their political impact, that they can go through this as somebody that's outside that 16 to 25-year-old range and increase their understanding and their future impact as well, which I've got to mentor that track for a couple of years now, and I'm thoroughly excited about the potential that has to get some really awesome people that have dedicated themselves to our country into the political process in a new way.
And you and I are all about building the next team and the next round of activists and the next round of staff and campaign staff and legislative staff. And what we've seen is, we have witnessed numerous different individuals who had no real intention of making an impact politically with their life. That was not on their path. That was not their life purpose. And they came to a single Patriot Academy and were so enthused that they came back to a Patriot Academy and then said, what can I do? And they were running campaigns, and they're working in the Capitol. There are chiefs of staff in the legislature that were started out as Patriot Academy students. There are people who are heads of communication at statewide nonprofits that were Patriot Academy students that had no intention of being involved in the political process until they went to a Patriot Academy. So I think it's a phenomenal opportunity, but it's also one of those, fundamentally life-shaping weeks that students will come into, and it will change the trajectory of the things they're involved in for the rest of their life. So,
and one thing to remember for folks that are outside of Texas, hopefully we got more and more listeners out there, is, as we've had people like Erickson and Shapiro and Glenn Beck sharing some of these first couple episodes. And one thing to remind you guys outside of Texas is the Texas Patriot Academy is the biggest, and being in Texas, I think it's the best, but there are a number of other state-based Patriot Academies that you can go to. So make sure you go to patriotacademy.com, look at the list and the schedule of those different academies they're doing throughout the country, and find one. It's something where if you're a student, you should go. If you're a veteran, look at going. If you're somebody who wants to help younger people get involved and help still push this out to get to more and more people, you can donate, you can sponsor, you can create scholarships. Whatever your involvement level is, there's an opportunity here, and it's going to make an impact.
Absolutely. Well, with no further ado, let's get right into our conversation with James Dickey, the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. Well, welcome to the Luke Macias Show. I am joined here by the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, James Dickey. Mr. Dickey, thank you so much for agreeing to sit down with us today.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure.
Well, I wanted to start out our conversation today just, a lot of people, I don't know if they know your entire background and story and what has you spending your time serving the Republican Party and serving the delegates and serving our state in this capacity. So would you mind just telling our listeners a little bit about what got you involved in the fight here in Texas?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd cared about politics for a long time, but like a lot of people, a lot of conservatives in particular, I'd just gotten focused on my family and my business. And then the 2008 primary came to Texas, and by the time the presidential got to Texas, the choice was McCain or McCain, and that frustrated me. Yeah. And so I voted at the last minute on election day, and my precinct chair happened to be there running the election as election judge. And he said, hey, if you'd like, stick around for a few minutes and join in on a precinct convention. I thought that sounded great, so I participated in the precinct convention, And then we all went to the Senate District Convention, and Denton County is a heavily Republican district.
Yep.
And so it was a big, vibrant precinct convention, and then we went to the state convention. And at the state convention, it was a presidential year, and so there was an election to become delegates to the national convention, and I was elected an alternate delegate to the national convention. Wow. And so in a very quick process, a very quick succession, was able to see at multiple levels how the inner workings of the party work, and really got inspired to get involved and make a difference. And then I got active. As everybody knows, President Obama was elected, and immediately went to work on Obamacare, and that was frustrating and disappointing. And so a lot of us were inspired by that to get moving. So became active in Dallas in the Dallas Tea Party, and got to know a lot of folks, and then moved to Austin to start a company with a friend here. And once again got involved, became a precinct chair, and then became a county chair. And then when my predecessor resigned, I was concerned that the person that was going to run for it had not been a county chair in a large county, and wasn't familiar with the laws around how you run a primary and all of those issues. And so I felt motivated to step up and run, and it's been a fantastic 10 years of, at all levels of the Republican Party of Texas, getting to know people and helping work together to make a difference.
So I think this is a really cool testimony. Just to take a step back, I mean, what does it say about the Republican Party that somebody who is reluctant to even vote in the primary can, within, correct me if I'm wrong, a 90-day period of time, vote, participate in their precinct convention, attend their county convention, attend the state convention, and get to attend the National Republican Convention? I just think that is an incredible testimony to, one, how open our party is and how low the barriers of entry are to somebody trying to make a difference. Does that make sense? I mean, I feel like there are so many activists out there who think that in order to get there, it would be 10 years and thousands of hours. But what does that say about the people of even Denton County at the time, that they were willing to support you and recognize passion and engage in that way?
Oh, no question. Everyone there was super supportive, and it was a great thing. And it's been one of the messages I've passed on to my kids. My older two are in their early 20s, and we have a daughter who's 14. And my message to them is, with a little effort and energy and passion, you can make a big impact on an important organization in a short period of time, if you're willing to work with people and work together, and if you care, and if you have something to offer.
So what are there, when you're out around the state talking to different activists and people, are there a handful of things that you just encourage people to do to take their activism to the next level?
Oh, absolutely. Right now, in fact, one of the things that I'm encouraging folks to do is take concrete steps to make a difference wherever you are. And everyone in Texas, especially if we're paying attention at all to last year's election results, and I certainly hope everyone is, that there is work that we all need to do wherever we are. So the rural counties completely saved our statewide elected officials. But in every one of those areas, we can't take anything for granted, and we need, if they were at 80%, we need to increase it to 85 because we need all the help we can get. In the urban and suburban areas, we need more. We need to be reaching out to, we need to be recruiting candidates. We need people to run. We need people to support those, whether it be financially or with time or with energy or with volunteer effort. There is a positive thing that everyone in Texas can do at every level, even if it's as simple as go get trained to be a deputy voter registrar and start making sure your friends and family and neighbors are registered to vote. That is an important thing to do. And if you don't have the time to do that, we're working to enable people so that it's even easier for them to be involved. So if they don't have time to go get trained as a deputy voter registrar and don't want to have to do the follow-up, then we've set up a system where if they will just tell their friends and neighbors who are not registered to text TX vote to 72,000, if they will tell their friends and neighbors, text TX vote to 72,000, that will get their friends and neighbors on the process for getting registered. And we need to do that. We need another million Republicans to turn out next election in Texas. It's a giant lift, but we have the people.
Yeah.
We just need to activate them and encourage them. And I am thrilled that every time I see someone who gets it, that they can make an impact.
So I do want to get on to the 2018 elections and some of the things that go into there. Before we do, though, I wanted to ask you a question. I mean, I think one of the reasons that I'm incredibly supportive of you as my chairman, right? I'm a delegate to the state convention. I voted for you, and I was proud to support you from the beginning. But one of the reasons I've been proud to support you is because you are somebody who has come from, pure activist in 2008. And I think that gives you a unique perspective. Even your frustration with the Republican Party, I think, gives you a unique perspective. So a lot of individuals in Texas might, and you hear this often, I think you hear it more and more, is, I'm conservative, but I'm a reluctant Republican. So as the chairman of the Republican Party, what do you say to those people who are definitely in opposition to the left, definitely in opposition to what they're doing, but sometimes are more reluctant or less enthused about the Republican Party? I think having you as the head should give them a lot of encouragement. But what are some of the things you tell those people?
Well, my approach to the party and to all of the things we do is that it should be additive, right? Yep. So if you don't like the way your county party is operating, or you don't like the way your legislators are operating, I suggest get in and add to the solution. So if you think there ought to be more active precinct chairs in your area, well, go recruit some active precinct chairs, or be one, even better yet. So absolutely, be the change you're looking for. I had some representatives who weren't focused on the future, give me some flack for who I was accepting donations from, and my response is, well, if you don't like that they're giving donations, the answer is not for the party to start turning away donations. Yep. The answer is go get someone else to add more, and then we'll all be one big happy family, as we should.
Absolutely. I tell my clients, you should take Planned Parenthood's money if they'll give it, and then we'll use it to try to pass more pro-life reforms. We just haven't found any Planned Parenthood official or PAC willing to write the check, unfortunately. So there are some limitations sometimes. But let's move on to 2018. So my question for you is, where is the Republican Party of Texas post 2018? Right, looking back,
sure,
hindsight's always 2020. Where are we post 2018? And then my second question to that, and I'd like maybe the answer to that one before we move on to the second one, but tell me about the people that we wanted to vote in 2018 that didn't vote. So
sure,
where are we? And then let's spend at least a little bit of time talking about that group of people.
So there's a presentation that I've been giving to the Republican National Committee, to donors across country and in the state, and now I'm giving it to county chairs and SREC members and activists around the state. In fact, I'll be giving it to Liberty County, the Republican Party, tonight. And
awesome.
I'm very excited about that. But the first slide of that says, just looking back at 2018, we have some things that were good. In the party, we raised 65% more in 2018 than we had done in the 5 years before that. Okay. We raised over
65%?
65% more. In our victory effort, we raised over $4 million, which was over 100% more than we had done in 2012 and 2016, and again, over 65% more than we had done in 2014. So we accomplished some good things, and for the 12th time in a row, we won every single statewide elected office. That's a huge accomplishment that cannot be taken for granted, and we should appreciate. Those are good things. And yet, even with all of that, even with being better on the fundraising, being better on the victory effort, and the victory effort not only shows better fundraising, but also shows better working together, because a victory effort is absolutely a team effort of all Republicans on the ballot across the state. And so even though we did those things, we lost 2 congressional seats. We lost 2 state Senate seats. We lost 12 state House seats. And in the urban suburban districts, we lost 31 of 32 appellate court seats. And that 32nd, the only reason we didn't lose that one is they didn't have someone running in that one. And so that's a giant warning that we absolutely, those are losses that are painful, losses that are going to hurt us for a while, and things that we absolutely do not take for granted, do not take lightly. So going into 2020, we absolutely know that we have giant challenges, and that incremental improvements, which 65% is a giant improvement, but still it's not a multiplier. It's not an increase of 4x or 5x. We have got to do better, especially knowing that during 2017 and 18, we had the Abbott campaign doing significant investments in field work that wasn't just for his own effort. A lot of that field work went to try to help House members, went to try to help people other than the Abbott campaign, to the governor's credit. I'm glad he did that. But he's not on the ballot in 20, and we now at the party need to replicate that effort. So that is a giant thing in front of us that we know we need to do for 2020.
So it's interesting that you bring that up, because that was actually one of the things I had written down that I wanted to ask you about, because anybody who was actively working campaigns this last election cycle would know that your ground game operations were basically Governor Abbott and any other local campaign. So if you were running your own state house or state senator congressional election, you might have had your own operations, and then it was Governor Abbott. So outside of that, none of the other statewide elected officials, and to the extent that the party didn't have a significant field or ground program, is that one of the things that you just mentioned changing? So can you maybe just expound a little bit upon that?
Yeah, so to give a feel, the Abbott campaign worked up to 140 people on the ground across the state over the course of the 2-year period. The plan, and conversely, at the state, we had to combine with state and the RNC. Together, we put out 8 field staff. So dramatically different.
Yes.
The Senator Cruz, I believe, by the end of his campaign, had something like 19 staffers out. Conversely, the very last report showed the Beto campaign had something like 800. So while we may not ever meet that 800 paid field staff that the Beto team did, we've got to find a way to replicate or replace or help make up for the absence of those 140 field staffers that Governor Abbott had. So the plan that I've been pitching as I have been going out and doing fundraising is for the party to have 50 paid field staff this year.
Got it.
Across the state, and that would work us towards that 140 kind of number by the end of next year. And we're going to work very closely with the Trump campaign, the RNC, the Cornyn campaign, whoever else are our general election candidates. We'll be working very closely with them to leverage everything they're doing, but also to help augment and offset the absence of that great Abbott campaign.
For listeners, I know that at the end of the day, we don't care where you register people, right? Any conservative in the great state of Texas needs to be engaged. And you mentioned even the realities that the rural areas are really what saved Texas. But if the average person in Texas is wondering, where is the real battleground, right? Where is all the action happening? What are the communities that you see as the main battlegrounds throughout Texas?
Absolutely. The obvious battlegrounds are the suburban communities in Texas. And so for far too long, we've completely ceded the urban areas in Texas. And as a result, the Democrats were able to use that as a stronghold and build out. And as naturally, as population has flowed into those areas, as those have been the highest growing areas of the state, that has given Democrats a base from which to work. And so we are going to provide, we the party are going to provide a lot of tools and methods to help, and training to help the rural communities to continue to be a strong base of support for us. But a bunch of the field work is going to be happening in urban, suburban areas. So, for example, a surprising number, Williamson County, Hayes County, those turned against us in this last election, and it cost us, those two alone cost us several House seats. Of the 12 that we lost, 3 of them were just in those 2 counties. And, same with Tarrant County. Senator Cruz actually lost Tarrant County for the first time in quite a long time. But Collin County and Denton County, had losses that people didn't expect to see, and that we're going to have to work to prevent repeating.
I know Williamson County was also kind of in the same situation, right? Just north of the Austin area as well.
Absolutely.
So let's get into fundraising, because you've mentioned even here a lot of your conversations and meetings with donors, and I will let the listeners know here that we had to delay this just a few minutes because you were on fundraising phone calls, right? So
that's right.
I'll at least give you credit for that, and something that I have no problems being delayed for. So one of the common criticisms I've heard of you and other chairmen in the past is, oh, well, they're just not fundraising, right? And this is something that, truthfully, if you take a step back and look at the last 10, 15 years of politics in Texas, that it tends to be the criticism. If you are a very conservative Republican Party chairman, then you're also really bad at fundraising. That's just generally the critical line. And so there's this narrative that people tend to drive that says you need to have kind of a middle of the road person who doesn't stand strong with the platform in order to raise money for the party. I think you have proven that not to be the case. And you mentioned that here with the 100% more with the victory fundraising efforts and 65% more with the party efforts. But talk to me a little bit about the state's fundraising. How much of that is even your time day to day, and what kind of success are you seeing?
So we've set up a process. So first of all, I came on full time as of January 1st. And so the party now has a right to demand of me primacy in all of my activities. And so every trip that I go on now, I don't have to worry about how fast I get back. I can worry about which donors can I see while I'm on that trip.
Got it.
And that's been very helpful. Talking to the staff, we now have it set up so that I'm doing a minimum of 5 hours a week on the phone. And we are tracking and reporting on that calls. I am inspired by the example of Ronna McDaniel, who is the chairwoman at the RNC. And while I've been on the RNC for the last year and a half, over that year and a half, she spent almost 500 hours on the phone, and it pays off. It does matter.
Wow.
And that works out to about an hour a day, or about 5 hours a week. And so I've already told my staff that will be a mandate for, I need to average that as we're doing, and it works. It's just straightforward. You need to make calls. You need to present a plan people can believe in. You need to show that you've got an operation that is quality, and we've been doing that. And as we do that, that inspires donors who believe in and benefit from the great leadership and the great policies that we have had here, that, it's our effort to make even better while the Democrats are preaching all sorts of crazy.
We Capital Inside just wrote an article, I think yesterday or day before, talking about all these various business interests that were all sponsoring the recent Texas Democrat Party reception, and it's companies like USAA and AT&T, I think, has been supportive of their convention in the past, and people like that, and talking about some of these business interests within Austin, trade associations that are maybe starting to become more comfortable with the Democrat Party, and whether or not that's showing their potential desire to see, that wave continue. And I know there's been a lot of speculation. Now, some of these companies support both parties, right? Because they're just trying to represent their businesses, right? Their association, their members. What has your success been with the more established Austin entities and interests, how do you feel like they've been receptive to the Republican Party in general?
Well, no question, there was a period where they felt like they could and should pull back from the party.
Yep.
As elected officials in the state have made it clear that we're all Republicans and this is a team sport, and they all benefit when the party is supported well. We just got a sponsorship for our legislative dinner from the Texas Association of Business just a couple of days ago, and that's an association that I'm happy to have back supporting the party.
Yep.
We've got some other corporations who had taken a little bit of a hiatus, and I'm glad to have them back in the fold as well. And as I said, my message is always more is better. If you want to see something different or you want to see something better with the party, the answer is get involved, make a difference, and you can't do that if you don't have a seat at the table. And for those entities, that seat at the table includes supporting the party.
So a lot of people made speculation during the last convention about AT&T not supporting the party because they, didn't support the more social conservative platform and policies that Republicans have traditionally supported. And I don't think they ever came out and refuted. I think they didn't refute the claim, right? But I think privately they took issue with the claim, and they were big supporters of the Democrat convention. Have they? They're a large employer here in Texas, and I think activists and delegates and conservatives in Texas would love to know. Have they been supportive of the party over the last 6 months at all? Have they come back yet?
Not yet. I do fully expect and plan that they will.
Yeah.
I think, frankly, I took great pride in the fact that a significant past sponsor that we were able to more than offset the fact that they had fallen off, and in fact, for last year's convention, fully funded a $1.6 million convention. It was a record for the convention, and fully funded that even in the absence of a prior significant contributor like them. But I do think it is not an insignificant thing for a corporation that significant in Texas to say, we want to be the top sponsor for the Democrat Party's convention, but we have no concern about not at all even participating in the Republican Party's convention. I don't think that's a message that should stay the case, and I look forward to having them back in the fold and being able to say, no, they support us fully as well.
No, and I think that is also a testimony to, conservatives in Texas, that they rose to the occasion, right, and made sure that the convention was funded regardless. Now, that gets us to one other thing regarding fundraising, and we'll be able to move on from there. But there were some accusations made during the last state convention, and there was a little bit of a heated race against you. And there was an individual that stood up and made accusations from a microphone that you were cooking the books, that there was financial malfeasance within the party, and all these other things. I think most people saw that as kind of a desperate last-minute Hail Mary pass to try to, take the chair, right? And so I don't think most delegates have followed up that story. So can you fill everybody in with the actions taken and where we are today?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, during the campaign, I told my wife, it's shocking what you learn about yourself in any given campaign.
It's always a joy.
Yeah, it is a joy. And to that end, it's a lot easier, frankly, as the candidate to accept those flaming arrows that come at you than it is for the family of the candidate. And so my wife and kids, I have great appreciation for the slings and arrows that they took and put up with for me to be able to serve. It's funny. The accusations made front page news, and the accusations were, to be very specific, that we were lying about the cash on hand, that the convention was not fully funded, and that we were lying about the fundraising that we had been doing. And so at the end,
those are direct lies.
I
mean, not direct lies, but direct accusations.
Direct accusations. They were
not
just plain
masked.
No, not in any way. There was no sugarcoating those accusations. They were pretty big pretty brutal and pretty specific.
Yep.
The good news is because they're specific, they're pretty easy to answer whether they're true or not.
Yes, sir.
And so at every convention, at the close of every convention, there's an immediate SREC meeting of the newly elected SREC. And at that meeting, one of the first things I did was request approval from the SREC to spend the extra money necessary to do an extra audit. And I say extra audit because, in case anybody didn't know, I had been chair since June of 2017, and every year the party has an audit done. So there had already in March been completed an audit that had already run through December 31st.
Got it.
And so that full audit had already said that our books, and that audit had already been released to the SREC, and it already said that there was literally nothing wrong. And for anybody who's been around audits very much, especially post Enron, audit firms like to couch their words a lot because because Enron's auditor got in a lot of trouble for not having done so. And our audit had no couching. It said everything's perfect. And yet, I asked that the SREC approve an extra funds for an extra audit to prove or disprove those claims. They're either true or not. And they approved that expense and approved that we follow the normal process. And so, and this is a little inside baseball, but the way the normal process works for an audit, so that it is arm's length, the national committee man and the national committee woman, who are each completely separately elected from me as the chair and anybody else in the party, they appoint 3 members of an audit committee from the SREC. The SREC, all completely separately elected. And that audit committee then chooses the audit firm that they want to work with, and they also direct the audit firm on what they want the direction to be. And so that audit committee, so Tony Andeshiel and Robin Armstrong, our national committee man and woman, they picked 3 members of the SREC, and they went with Tom Rollins, who's up from Amarillo, and we had Chuck Branch from Plano, and I'm drawing a blank on who the 3rd member of the committee was. But they picked a
Texans have problems with that 3rd issue.
Sorry. Exactly. Exactly. But they picked that audit committee. That audit committee picked that we stick with the auditor who had been doing our stuff, both because they had been doing our stuff and because it's the same audit committee that the RNC uses. So it's a very credible audit firm that knows their stuff. And they charged them with specifically answering those 3 questions. Is it true? Were the cash numbers reported correct? Was the convention paid for? And were the fundraising numbers correct? And that audit committee went to work. That was as of June. They went to work, and at our December meeting, they were able to report that the convention was fully funded. The fundraising numbers, now they only sampled like 95% of the fundraising numbers, but every single item they sampled in their audit was exactly correct on all the fundraising numbers. So the fundraising numbers are all correct. And then they checked every cash balance. And when I say every cash balance, because of the way the party works and because of federal election laws and state election laws and corporate fundraising rules and all that, we actually have something like 16 different bank accounts. And we get those statements every single month. So they checked every one of those 16 bank accounts for every month for the first 6 months of this year, because that's when the accusation was in June. And there was one bank account 1 month where we underreported $1.20. There was no other time when any number was reported at all incorrectly, and there was never a time when any money was underreported. We actually, or was overreported, right? We never inflated the cash. The cash was, now, unfortunately, the way news works, it was front page news. The accusations were front page news. And the fact that the accusations were proven 100% by an independent outside audit firm selected by others and set up by others and instructed by others never made news at all, much less front page news.
No, that's very unfortunate, and thank you for clearing that up. I think other people will be happy to hear those reports. So moving into the legislative session. One of the things I think that is remarkable about you and your leadership is that even when you were Travis County GOP chair, you understood that one of the biggest motivators to people being involved in the party is the policy that they want to advance, right?
Sure.
And so you were down in the Capitol. You spent time testifying and reminding legislators these are the priorities of the Republican Party, right? We have a platform that's pretty direct, and it speaks to different policy issues, and it's the idea that these are what we believe as a party, right? And
Correct.
so we're in a legislative session. And I think one of the reasons that so many people support you is that you actually see the platform as something that the party should continue to champion during the legislative session and not be quiet about. So can you speak to just what we're doing this session? I know several SREC members that are on the legislative committee, and they're down there in the Capitol. They're walking the halls. They're talking to legislators. So just talk to people a little bit about what's the party doing to make sure that the platform is not just something that everybody feels good about at the end of convention, but something that causes the party to take action during the session.
Absolutely. One of the consistent messages that I'm working to deliver to our legislators is that, we face giant challenges in the 2020 election. In order to have the best chance possible in the 2020 election, we need wins to point to, differentiators to point to during that campaign so that we can get people reelected.
Yep.
And that absolutely is the goal of the party, but it is a virtuous cycle. The party exists to get people elected so they can pass policy that will then get people elected. It is very much a virtuous cycle. And I have been consistent in delivering that message to the folks. So I met with the House caucus. I'll be meeting with the Senate caucus. I'm meeting individually with members of both chambers. And, between them, we've got almost 100 or over 100 members of the two chambers to meet with. I met with the speaker and several other members of the House last week. In all of those conversations, the question is, how can we help you get past the policy wins that will differentiate us and earn you support from voters for reelection? And part of how we do that is making sure we've got the folks who can show up and testify to support bills that we help spread the word. And so we've organized this the STAT group, Strategic Texas Activist Team, and people can sign up for that on our website at texasgop.org/stat.
Okay.
And they indicate which issues they care the most about. And when we're in an urgent scenario on one of those issues, or as we have things to update them on one of those issues, we'll let them know about what's going on and how they can help. And whether it's calling their legislator to say, hey, this bill I sure hope you'll support, or showing up to testify. It is my intention to show up multiple times this session to testify, especially as the most important bills get into the most important part of the committee process, that we support with the full weight of the party getting past good policy so that we've got reason for people to vote for us.
I feel like there are some, just legislators and elected officials who take 2018 and it has definitely instilled a significant amount of fear. And that's a natural reaction,
Sure.
to a state that gets a lot closer. But I sometimes feel like you're seeing a pendulum swing, which we tend to be, one extreme or the other. But just in conversations with legislators and stuff, it seems like any potential policy is, well, what do you think suburban voters will think about this? And I'm like, well, honestly, they might not think at all about this. I mean, the reality is that we know there are a handful of policy issues that will dominate the psyche and the mental capacity of individual voters, right? And some of those will be federal issues, and Trump will be on the ballot, and there will be federal things. And then on Texas, it's probably going to be very limited to, public education policy and property taxes. And that in some way frees up conservatives to say, if we want to pass deregulating certain businesses and allowing small businesses more freedom, if we want to cap government spending at population inflation and all these other things that are on the Republican Party platform, I don't know that urban, suburban, or rural voters will be walking into the legislative session thinking, hey, was the spending cap passed or not, on a statewide
Right.
spending reform, or were there some budget reforms passed? They probably won't know. So I think there's an important opportunity we have to pass major pieces of legislation like property tax reform, which I'm sure you're excited
Absolutely.
about because it's reflective of the Republican Party platform. And you actually, which is for some reason a rare thing, but you have all three of our main statewide officials all getting excited about this, right?
Yeah.
So that's really encouraging for Republicans. But I think there's also opportunities to say you can go through the list of Republican principles and ideas and policy initiatives, and there are some that you can pass that probably won't have an effect on whether or not the vote goes our way in November, but will have an effect on whether or not we governed in a conservative manner this session.
Well, and not only that, but will our base have the excitement to turn out to do the
Yes.
work necessary that
Yes.
we need? I mean, in the election, the messaging has to be this complex mix of, does it differentiate us from Democrats, and does it motivate voters, and
Yep.
does it resonate with them? And so those messaging things will be few. One that we know will differentiate us and will resonate and does matter and will
Yep.
compel someone to show up and
Yep.
vote is, will we have reduced property taxes or not?
Yes.
And that's why that's one of our legislative priorities. But that absolutely is a compelling thing. Some of the other stuff that we have to do, everybody's made it clear we have to do something on school finance. Yes, we have to. But does it differentiate us, or does it just make sure that does not become an issue that beats us up next session? Well, that's a necessary thing to do too. But what else can we do that guarantees that our folks turn out?
So that brings up an interesting point. But if you are the spokesman of the Republican Party and the average middle of the road, independent, right of center Texan in a suburban area comes to you, what are the main issues that you're talking about to say, this is what makes us the party that represents you, and this is what makes us the party that you want to be governing your state?
Right. So the messaging has been consistent that conservative policies that have yielded less regulation, less government interference, less taxes is why the economy is booming in Texas. It's why so many of us moved here. It's why we have great opportunity and freedom and low unemployment, and why everyone is benefiting here. And do you want more of that, or do you want some insiders in government picking winners and losers and manipulating the outcome? Because we've seen what that happens in other states, how that happens in other states, and what happens when they do. And it's not good. We don't need to turn into this century's Chicago.
So you got involved in 2008, and you've come so far just since your initial decision to attend a precinct convention. Are there any people politically, either current or former, that you look up to, that you respect, that you even try to model yourself after at all?
Sure. I very much respected the way that Steve Munisteri operated as chair. He did a good job financially for the party, helping rescue the party from significant dire problems. But also when he ran the meetings, it was obvious that everyone was welcome to participate and everyone was welcome to give their input, and that's just an environment and an atmosphere that is positive, and that's my belief of that's the function the party serves, is getting everybody together and then being that avenue for people to express their concerns and priorities and issues. And that's why we have the platform. That's why we have our conventions, so people can do that. And I really do admire and respect that. I'm excited about Steve coming back to Texas and getting a chance to work with him even more closely than I was able to do at the White House.
And for those people who don't know, Steve Ministeri is coming back to work with our U.S. Senator John Cornyn, who'll be running for re-election in 2020, and really at the top of the ticket outside of our president, right?
Correct.
And he will likely be largely driving that main narrative for our state. So having Steve at heavily involved, right, in that organization is something that we can all be pretty excited about.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Is there something? Tell us something, or tell the delegates, the activists in Texas. Tell them something about you that we might not know on a personal level, or you're actually secretly a New England Patriots fan or Los Angeles Lakers
No,
or
Cowboys.
Okay.
I am a Cowboys fan. Always was. Even paid to go to a game the year they went 1-16.
Wow.
So 1-15. So yeah, that was back in '89. That was pretty ugly.
I wasn't born.
But yeah, sorry. No. Well, I guess the big thing there's the biggest thing in my life that most people don't know is that my brother is profoundly deaf and my son has some hearing loss as well. And so I'm a little bit rusty, but am pretty good with sign language and very sensitive to making sure that we as a party do things that are welcoming and encouraging to all.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you mentioned to me earlier that the party itself has been starting a podcast or launching a podcast. So can you just tell people real quick about how they engage with that, or are all those platforms out, or is that yet to come?
No, they are. We started with my monthly update, which I've been doing for a while now. We just recorded our first video monthly update.
Awesome.
And then, yes, we are getting ready. Our first couple of episodes, I want to be sure we've got 3 or 4 episodes in the can before we put it out.
You're more
but we're
prepared
going
than
to do
myself.
a video and an audio podcast, and I'm very excited about it.
Awesome. And those will be on all platforms, iTunes,
Absolutely.
Google,
Yeah,
YouTube,
Stitcher,
all of that.
the whole shebang. Yeah.
Done. That's awesome. That's awesome. Chairman, I cannot thank you enough for your willingness to sit down and talk to us. It's encouraging. I think conservatives in general should be encouraged that we have a strong voice on the state party level, but also that we're in the process of planning how to keep this state red, because that's not going to be an easy thing, and it's not a guaranteed outcome if we don't put in the effort to do so. Is there anything you want to leave people with, action items, things they can do?
Yes, absolutely. The message I've been communicating to everyone is Texas cannot be taken for granted. If it ever could have, it certainly cannot now. And so let's all be as informed as we can. Let's all get to work as quickly as we can. And for everybody listening, if you would like to know what is being said by and about your elected Republicans in Texas, then subscribe to our daily news service. It's a daily news clipping of everything being said by and about our elected Republicans in Texas. And to subscribe, you just text TX News to 72,000. That's TXNEWS to the number 72,000. If you do that, we'll make sure to get you on the list. We'll get you informed. You'll start getting that daily update, and then we'll also be able to inform you about other important stuff. Please, it's a easy first step.
Awesome. Chairman, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That was a great conversation. And again, I go back to the start of the conversation, but I love the fact that in 2008, James Dickey was not even sure if he was going to vote in the Republican primary because he didn't like that he didn't have a conservative option on the ballot for president. And he decides, okay, fine, I'm going to go vote. And some guy goes, hey, do you want to come to a precinct convention? And 10 years later, he's the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, running a statewide organization whose sole mission is to advance the conservative platform ideas of the Republican Party and elect more conservative individuals over a more liberal opposition. And so I just think that's a tremendous testimony to what the grassroots do here in Texas and the ability you have to make a change in such a short time. I mean, Raz, some people don't know your full background, but you and I both, were not involved at a time, and within then a very short period of time found ourselves having a pretty big impact within the political process. So I just think James's story should be encouraging for most conservatives.
I feel like that's exactly how the party's supposed to work, right? I mean, we want to see, we want to be bringing in new blood, new perspectives, and people have a new excitement, because I feel like when we see some people that have been involved for a really, really long time, there's some mission creep and a little bit of enthusiasm drop off. We need to be bringing in new people and activating them. And I think this is a really cool story to have that's shared that I didn't even know the depth of. I wasn't aware of how quick that had happened and how much he put in that short amount of time. But wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, Yeah, no, it's a real testimony. It's a real testimony. Again, just want to remind everybody who our sponsor is patriotacademy.com. You heard a lot about them at the start, but if you have not heard about Patriot Academy, please go there. Look at what they're doing. If it doesn't matter if you want to go, I'll tell you, I know personal testimonies of young people who are serving in the Capitol right now as legislative directors who only went because their grandpa signed them up for Patriot Academy. I mean, I'm not kidding. These people showed up and go, I don't know, my grandpa paid for me to come here and I'm not really interested. And then a week later, they're going, oh my gosh, what can I do to save my country? And now they're full-time working in the political process. So do look at it. If you don't know somebody who you want to directly send, go to patriotacademy.com. Consider supporting their efforts. Raz and I are longtime supporters of their organization and will continue to be because we see the impact that it has on our nation. And Raz, I know we're now 3 episodes into this. I mean, thank you so much for being involved, but also it's kind of encouraging just the impact we've had in a short period of time.
It's been exciting. When you, in this whole podcasting world, it's very much a meritocracy. You get some good content out there and people start sharing it. And it was really cool. I mean, congratulations with the first episode out of the gate, getting the kind of notoriety. I mean, the goal is to get that story out there, right? That's critically important, and most people don't know about it. So if you're just coming in on episode 3, go back and listen to that first episode, looking at the situation that James and his folks are facing. It's an incredible story, and we need to do something to make sure these kids are protected.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for everyone who listened. Thank you for supporting our show. And just a reminder, subscribe to the show. Raz is somebody who you should all be following because he's got incredibly helpful content. Raz, how can people follow you and where can they find out more about you?
So they can find out more about our coaching, the candidate training programs, and the podcast, the How to Run for Office podcast at mycampaigncoach.com. You can reach out to me directly at raz.us is my website, and I look forward to talking to you guys offline.
Awesome. And thank you so much for listening, guys, and have a wonderful day. God bless. Thank you for listening to the Luke Macias Show. If you value this content and want our message to spread, please consider 3 of the following steps. 1, subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to us on and leave us a review. 2, visit LukeMacias.com and sign up for our email alerts. And 3, follow Raz and I on Twitter and visit my Facebook page at facebook.com/Luke Macias, Texas. Again, that's facebook.com/Luke Macias, Texas. Thank you so much, and God bless.